field. We'll start with basic movement. Walk over there, would you?
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges.
This base is still getting cleaned up. Jump and crawl your way to that gun over there.
Out of charges. Out of charges.
Now shoot that flying target for me. Accuracy is everything, so remember to stop before you fire. Try it on these bots, then grab the rifle.
Out of charges. 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 Out of charges.
All right, Agent, 3 more. Position yourself so
Out
you
of
only
charges.
fight one at a time. You can aim down sights for a closer look.
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges.
The next bot can't see you, but it will
Out
hear
of charges.
you. Walk slowly so it doesn't detect your footsteps. Nice job. Let's try out some different guns on these targets. Normally, you'd have to think about which guns and abilities to spend your creds on. But for now, go wild.
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges.
Take this time to check your settings.
Out of charges.
Adjust your aim sensitivity. Review your keybinds. I want everything to custom fit.
Out of charges. 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 Out of charges.
Let's test your accuracy.
Out
These
of charges.
bots pop with one headshot. Body shots do less damage and leg shots even less.
Out of
They'll
charges.
despawn quickly, so see how many you can
Out
get
of
before the
charges.
timer runs out.
Out of charges. 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 Out of charges.
Not bad. All right,
Out
track
of
down that
charges.
waypoint. It'll lead you to the teleporter. Go through it so we can practice using your abilities.
Out of
They
charges.
make a huge difference in setting up a favorable fight.
Out of charges. 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 Out of charges.
Every agent's abilities are different.
Out of charges.
See what your bow does by shooting that wall.
Out of charges.
And there they are. Use your intel
Out
to
of
take them out
charges.
one by one.
Out of charges. Out of charges.
Up ahead is a device called the Spike.
Out of
It's how
charges.
the enemy steals our radio.
Out of
net.
charges.
Attackers try to plant it at key
have
sites,
the
and
spike.
defenders try to stop them. Practice taking the Spike
Out
to the
of charges.
highlighted site and planting it.
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charge. Out of charges. Out of charge. Out of charges. 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 Out of char. Out of charges.
Once the
planted.
attackers plant the Spike, the defenders will try to
charges.
defuse it. I'll send in some bots. You
Out
take
of
cover in the
charges.
boathouse behind you and defend that Spike.
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges.
Oh!
Out of charges. 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 Out of charges.
Remember to use your abilities to give you the advantage. Shoot your sonar bolt at the targets on the wall to reveal hidden enemies.
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges.
I am the hunter!
Out of charges.
I am the hunter! I am the hunter!
Out of charges. Out of charges.
I am the hunter! I am the hunter!
Out of charges.
I am...
Out of charges. Out of charges. Out of charges.
Excellent.
Out of
Good
charges.
to go.
I am the
Always head
hunter!
back to the range to practice different guns and abilities.
Out of charges.
You're ready. The front lines are
Out
waiting.
of charges. Out of
Welcome
charges.
to Valorant.
Out of charges.